Hello, and welcome to the 6th edition of Collaborating for Access, a project of the Digital Public Library of America, Chief Officers of State Library Agencies, or COSLA, and Readers First. I'm Michael Blackwell, Project Manager for Readers First, a movement by some 300 libraries and library systems internationally to improve access to library digital content. Visit us at www.readersfirst.org. COSLA's mission is to nurture state libraries and lead with a collective voice for all the nation's libraries. Learn more at www.cosla.org, that's C-O-S-L-A. Today, we're looking at how libraries and indie publishers might collaborate more effectively. How often as a librarian have you felt trapped by high-cost licenses or high-demand items that ultimately limit your collection size and diversity? As a smaller indie publisher author, have you ever wondered how and why libraries license what they do, and if you could increase your author's visibility and market share there? Here to explore this topic is a distinguished panel and our moderator, Claire Kelly from 7 Stories Press. This session is in part a preliminary for the Indie Publisher Library Summit to be held April 2nd, 2024 at the PLA conference in Columbus, Ohio, about which Claire will provide more detail. Take it away, Claire.
Thank you so much, Michael. My name is Claire Kelly, and I'm the marketing director at 7 Stories Press, also in library school. And I'm so excited to be here on behalf of IPC, the Independent Publishers Caucus, and our 75 member presses for the opportunity to hear from librarians about how we might be able to work together. In an age where libraries are under attack, whether it be book challenges, budget issues, and the financialization of ebook platforms in the library market, I know that indie publishers want to do all we can to support librarians on the front lines and also understand the digital library ecosystem a bit better so we can advocate for terms that will allow our books to be present in more library collections. So to that end, it's been really wonderful to work with DPLA, with Micah and Michael at Readers First, the ALA eBooks Working Group, and through IPC to start these conversations. We see this event as another opportunity to bring people on board to work together. And we are planning, as Michael mentioned, an offsite event at PLA on April 2nd from 10 to 3 in Columbus, Ohio, right before the conference starts, the day before the conference starts. And we envision that to be a meeting between indie publishers and librarians who don't normally talk to each other directly. And we hope that topics and issues brought up today can continue to be discussed there. So I'm going to drop a link to an interest form in the chat. Please fill it out if you'd like to join us and stay in the loop as we continue organizing. There will be access both in person and virtually. So throughout this webinar, I would encourage librarians to share their thoughts and opinions in the chat for anything that resonates or topics that that you want to bring up. And for indie publishers, please ask questions. We'll be doing a Q&A with our distinguished librarian panel, so start thinking of your questions now. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our librarian panelists today. Carmi Parker is a librarian serving on the executive committee of the Washington Anytime Library, the second largest overdrive library in Washington state. Carmi is also a working group member of Readers First, and Carmi facilitated the library boycott of Macmillan in 2019 after they said they'd only sell 1 copy per library of newly released titles during the first 8 weeks of publication, claiming libraries were cannibalizing sales. Over 1,200 libraries joined, and Macmillan ended the embargo in March 2020. Lisa Sally is the Assistant Director at Ocean State Libraries, Rhode Island. Ocean State Library serves over 50 library systems in Rhode Island, providing a statewide catalog and technical support, among other services, to member libraries. Lisa has been managing the Digital Public Library eZone, which is a shared site for the consortium, since 2007. Pamela M. Graham is the Director of Humanities and Global Studies and Director, Center for Human Rights Documentation and Research at Columbia University Libraries, and she will represent our academic library perspective. And finally, Sandra Breedlove is the Digital Selection Librarian at Sonoma County Library. She is currently coordinating a grant award to Sonoma County Library by the California State Library, which supports the acquisition of indie titles with a focus on diversity and expanding access to digital content through a statewide collection. So I'd like to turn it over to Carmi. Each panelist will present for about 5 minutes, and then we'll go into a Q&A.
Hi, everyone. I want to thank you so much for being here. I am really excited for the opportunity to talk with indie publishers because for my consortium, which is 45 tiny to medium-sized libraries in Washington State, indie titles are absolutely mission critical to serving our most avid readers, who I want to tell you something about. Let me share my screen real quick. There, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. That is my local lighthouse. If you're ever out here, you should visit it. It's extremely cute. And I want to tell you about Lighthouse Readers. I did a study on our patrons and their behavior in 2002. And one of the things we found was that 40% of the patrons generate almost 90% of the circ. These are the folks who are always looking around for something new to read, as opposed to laser focused readers who are interested in the one thing that they heard about on TikTok or Jenna, and they want one thing. The Lighthouse readers are always reading. Half of them read multiple books per week. I'm not going to go through every single bullet, but one of the things that you may want to know is that studies show that library users buy more books than non-library users. So these folks, these avid readers, I hope will be interesting to you because they are almost certainly the book influencers in their life. We have people who are reading upwards of 80 books a year, so multiple books per week. And you can imagine you may be this person or you may know this person, right? They're the person who you go to when you want a book recommendation. And they usually give you books for gifts. Let me go forward. One way that indie publishers are already reaching Lighthouse readers at the Washington Anytime Library is with your fair and competitive prices. Almost all indie publishers offer a print-like price for a print-like loan. A print-like loan to me is the one that, it can be loaned to one person at a time, right? And we believe that that's a fair price because it's about what you would make with a print book. So here are 3 queer romances. The ones, the 3 together from the indie publishers are ones that my consortium actually licensed. And the one that's at the top, Chef's Kiss, is one that we did not license because when we were looking for a diversified romance, we were looking to diversify our romance and stretch into queer romances. Indie publishers offered a much more competitive license model. The reason why we care about fair prices is one, the fair prices buy us more books, and a diverse collection is something that is a key to what libraries offer. We want to be able to reach all of our patrons and put the right book in the right hand. And in order to do that, we need to not be just buying the bestsellers. The other reason not to pay $60 for 24 months of access is simply taxpayer stewardship. That's our job. We wouldn't pay 3 times for a van what an individual pays for a van, and I don't believe we should be paying 3 times for a book what an individual pays for a book. What else can you do if you're interested in reaching the Lighthouse readers? Keep up the great work with the fair prices and perpetual use licenses, and thank you for that, especially with the demand through the pandemic. Our collection without your fair prices would be not remotely as diverse and broad as it is now. Lighthouse readers are very sensitive to availability, more so than popularity. If they have to choose between waiting for a popular book or reading another book right now, they will pick their one right now. Well, actually, they pick both. They place a hold, and then while they're waiting, they read all kinds of stuff from the mid list. If you would consider simultaneous use packages, that would be a win-win for libraries. So that means your books are always available and might be useful for new authors who are struggling to break out a little bit and you want to get some eyeballs on them, or series authors where you might want to put the early books in a series in a simultaneous use package in order to hook readers. Another note, e-audio keeps growing with no end in sight. If you're waffling about whether or not to do e-audio, just go with it. You can't go wrong with e-audio. And also finally, good cover art really makes a difference. I can show you the circulation stats for the interest in indie titles with great cover art versus indie titles with not so great cover art. Finally, I'm available for any questions at all. Don't hesitate to email me. I love to hear from everybody in the reading community. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmi. Next up, we have Lisa.
Hi, everybody. This is Lisa from Ocean State Libraries. We are a consortium that includes the 100% of the public libraries in Rhode Island, 50 systems and about 70 branches. And we kind of worked independently on what we wanted to say. Much of what Carmi had to say would be what I would have to say. I was looking at the 3 questions. What are the opportunities that you have? What licensing options are most attractive for us? And what ways can we work together for mutual benefit? Absolutely agree with Carmi that continuing to do perpetual licenses is key. I would argue that one of the highest costs of having to deal with purchasing metered access licenses, whether it's by time or by circulation, is the time it takes to manage the constantly disappearing books from the bookshelf. And so I would say continue to go that way for sure. One of the frustrations with what we have to purchase from some of the other publishers is the idea of not being able to get access to purchase something that anybody else has access to purchase. You know, there's so many titles we could throw out there. Charlotte's Web is a favorite one of ours to throw out there that we cannot buy Charlotte's Web for our digital library. No embargoes, no access to just abridged versions, no pulling an item because it suddenly became popular and you didn't want us to have it in perpetual access anymore. These types of things are very frustrating and impossible to manage. And as an example of that, you know, I was looking yesterday actually, that we have a Barbara Kingsolver book that came out a year ago that we satisfied in physical demand in our libraries across 70 libraries in less than 6 months. And in our digital library, we still have a 6 to 9 month wait on those titles. We've spent the same amount of money in physical formats as we have in digital formats, and yet most of our digital purchases will be gone 2 years after purchasing them. So again, dealing with the constantly disappearing library is just not the way to go. When I was thinking about what types of things can we do to collaborate, what licenses do we like, the perpetual licenses, and I agree with Carmi, the simultaneous use access licenses can be very, very helpful. They can be helpful for community reads. And I've even been just thinking about this fact that, you know, sometimes you see, right now I'm sitting on a cart of debut authors. I don't have the money to purchase all of them. But how about something like where we say to you, here's a cart of books, can we make them available to our public? And then the first time one is checked out and downloaded or opened, at least just opened, because that's another issue that I have, is checking it out versus actually opening the book. We pay for it, and maybe put some monthly budget cap on there. Like, these are some innovative things that we could do to see what our patrons want. I do this with Spanish titles in our consortium. I expose maybe 80,000 Spanish titles at a cost per circ basis. And then after a couple of months, I get a report of what our Spanish speaking population is interested in, so that I can purchase, judiciously. The final thing that I wanted to suggest was, just some other things like when we went digital with books, there was so much opportunity to be able to do things. Personally, I feel like I don't rest until we say we're a population of 1 million, maybe 40% of our population has active library cards. So what is this title in this by this author worth to my general population? And just charge me that. And let's not place holds, let's not do time limits, just charge me that to dish that up to my population. To me, that's the ultimate. No, my children are all in their 30s. They have no idea why they have to place a digital book on hold. I think we've forgotten that it isn't a book, so we could in theory have access to it straight through. So you have the opportunity to say that is what we're gonna negotiate. Like, here's a title, $1,000, debut author, and you have it forever and there are no holds. It's a radical concept, but it maybe not so radical for digital books. So I just feel like we need to go back to the core foundations of what a library is. We need to be able to build collections so that we buy them now, maybe they're there 2 years later for the very first checkout. We shouldn't have to worry that we have to, purchase it again. The final thing I want to say is when we have to spend this expensive budget on the very popular authors, it does limit our available resources for other new debut authors, which generally cuts right out, what you are making available to us. So the more attractive you can make those titles for us to purchase and get back to the original idea of, building a collection, looking at it once. Yes, I want it. And you don't have to think about it again until you weed it. That's really what we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Pamela, you're up.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me to be part of the panel, and I hope my comments from the vantage point of academic libraries will be helpful. Just an aside, I have to have some windows open today, and I'm really hoping no ambient New York City noise comes through during my moment here, so apologies in advance if that happens. So I wanted to just share a few things about our collecting practices in our library, and a few suggestions and more information about how we acquire materials. So Columbia Libraries is a large research library, and we proactively collect to support advanced research and to support teaching and learning on campus. Including a diversity of perspectives and voices has always been important. It's an important value that we strive to uphold in our collecting work and in many other areas of our work. In addition to the subject specialists who select materials, we also gratefully and regularly accept suggestions and recommendations from people throughout our campus community, and we work with faculty to acquire and place some materials on reserve that are being used in courses. Our selecting is dispersed among 30 different subject specialists, more or less, who work in their respective areas. None of these folks are full-time working on selecting, so selecting is always just a piece of what people do as part of a fuller set of responsibilities. Because we collect very deeply and we want users to have access to a very broad spectrum of publishing, we're also engaging more and more in collaborative work with other libraries, including the partners we have in our offsite storage facility where most of our print books have to be stored now. And that's the New York Public Library, Princeton, and Harvard, and also through the Ivy Plus Library Consortium, which is a mostly Northeast regional based network of libraries that have resource sharing agreements. So in terms of acquiring books, we work with distributors, and we do fairly little title by title selection given the volume of collecting that we do. We currently work with YBP and their GoB platform for our main US plan. We also do a lot of international collecting, so we have a whole ecosystem of international vendors that provide us with access. And I would have to say, I sometimes think the international collecting has more representation of smaller publishers because we work with smaller vendors. And I'm not sure that is something we always achieve as much as we'd like to through our main US purchasing. We also have a small press distribution approval plan that brings in about 400 books a year. So that is one area where we've tried to identify and work with finding smaller presses. In terms of ebooks, we are increasingly pivoting to buying more ebooks than print, but we actually buy quite a bit of print still. In some cases, it's because there is no ebook available. And in terms of the ebook acquisitions, we work quite a bit with major publishers to purchase front lists. We also have some evidence-based models where we commit to paying to access a publisher's or a group of publishers' materials, and then commit to buying a certain amount of that material at the end of the year, using usage statistics to inform the decisions we make about what to acquire permanently. We opt as much as possible for DRM-free and unlimited user options, but we kind of work from that ultimate point, and then we'll go down from there if our options are limited and we have to land on buying something with fewer simultaneous users. We actually don't have the staffing in place to do a lot of the management that was already mentioned about removing titles and adding titles. So we try to make it as permanent as possible when we acquire material, and that can be a big disincentive to acquiring something in an ebook form if we have to turn it on and off. And then I'll finally just add that one of the areas of particular challenge are formats such as music and film, where we see a great diversity of creators and platforms and modes of distributing that material. And it is becoming extremely hard to get access to a lot of that when there are no institutional licenses or models that would work with the requirements that we have in place for procurement, and where the models are really geared at individual or smaller scale users. So with that, I'll stop and look forward to questions and hearing more. Thank you.
Yes, please leave your questions in the chat. And next up, we have Sandra.
Hello, thanks for having me. My name is Sandra Breedlove, and I'm the Digital Selection Librarian at the Sonoma County Library. And currently, I primarily purchase in the fiction English collection. So before our digital purchase expanded, I purchased for all audiences and all digital formats and languages. I've been working in this area of librarianship since 2018. Our digital collection currently serves about 500,000 patrons in our service area. And we have seen such a huge amount of growth in the past few years, not unexpected with the pandemic, giving it a boost due to it being one of the primary formats that people could access most easily. Now, our focus for the past 2 years or so has been the longevity of access, especially with series titles. Those are a pain point for our patrons. If they want to start a series way at the beginning, it's hard to keep the continuity of the series going for them. We also try to meet patron demand. We get so many requests and needs communicated to us by our patrons. And we're also focusing on increasing the diversity of our collection and staying within the limits of our budgets. Doing all of this at once can be quite challenging. Now, Sonoma County has recently been awarded funds, as was said earlier, to the California State Library's eBooks for All grant. And when we were applying for this grant, we decided to focus on the indie market as a way to expand our access to more titles, more diverse authors, and really contribute to a statewide collection for all, access for all Californians. When we also were looking for California authors and things that we might not see on our other platforms. And while this has really just begun, books published by the indie authors and small presses has always been part of our larger digital collection, but we're now just giving them more of a focus and giving them a bigger piece of the budget pie for the moment, as long as these funds last. We often receive patron requests numbering in the thousands every month, and a good portion of those are for indie titles. The problem is with the budget is it's often eaten up by high cost licenses from front list big publisher titles, which has been mentioned by my colleagues already. And oftentimes we have to buy dozens of licenses for one book in order to meet our holds ratio. Our holds ratio is currently set at 4:1, which means we strive to only have 4 people waiting for each copy at any time. And this is a pretty low holds ratio, and that means it takes a lot more budget to maintain. And this is a ratio that's also applied across all of our formats, print or digital, regardless of price point. Now, the great thing we've been finding out about the small presses and indie titles is that they do offer often wonderfully reasonably pricing with perpetual access. Thank you for that. But we still need more options. What we would love to see is basically a menu of all the possible license types that we could apply to any particular title. We'd like to see perpetual, simultaneous use. Within simultaneous use, give us the option of a month, 6 months, a year, or perpetual. Price it appropriately, let us choose. Using cost per use catalogs are really great, as was said, to expand offerings where patrons can pick what they want and then we pay after they've used it. We use that a lot for our world languages. And also discoverability is really important. Having your books on every platform available to us to order is useful, as well as having really good data for each title. We would like to see appropriate audience categories, really good subject heading application. If there are reviews, please have them integrated into the marketplaces so we don't have to try and hunt them down. And those are just a few things overall. But I think we have really got opportunity here, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Thank you, Sandra. I think I'm going to pass it over to Micah for a little distributor section before we go into the Q&A. Is that right?
Sure, great. Thank you so much. So the next segment, we have 3 folks on the call, including myself, who work to help bring titles from publishers to libraries. So I'm here on behalf of the Palace Marketplace. DPLA is a partner with Lyrasis in the Palace Marketplace. The Palace Marketplace is the only nonprofit distributor for libraries in the US. We're going to try to be very brief in our remarks. We're mostly here to help answer questions that might be relevant that come up. So I'll just say, the Palace is a little different. Our system was designed to really empower librarians to have more control over their digital services. And so as part of that, the architecture is a little different. Libraries have the ability to merge content from multiple sources and manage it in terms of how it's presented to users before it's put in the Palace app. So on the Palace Marketplace, my work there, we really encourage publishers to offer a variety of licensing models to libraries. We've heard really the same feedback you all just heard from these selectors, that they like to have some options, including the perpetual one at a time and some others. So we have 4 preferred models that we strongly encourage libraries or publishers to offer. Those are the perpetual one at a time, a bundle of 40 lens, 10 of which can be used at the same time, a small bundle of 5 loans that are all available simultaneously. And then we encourage folks to offer simultaneous use, multi-user option as well. So we also are open to a wide range of other license types based on time, other numbers of titles in bundles. We have a lot of publishers offering the 26 len bundles. So we really try to facilitate, the widest range of options for libraries from publishers. So I think I'm going to just stop there and say we're really grateful to everyone for being here. As DPLA is a co-convener of this, I hope if you're enjoying this conversation, you'll think about checking out the link that's way up at the top of the chat for the PLA event that we're helping to convene. We at DPLA really believe that kind of ultimately publishers and libraries are mostly on the same team. We're all kind of on team reading. We want people spending their time with books, and that we can collaborate and work together to make that happen in ways that generate win-wins for everyone, and ultimately for access for Americans and for literacy. So we're happy to be helping to facilitate that. And I am now going to pass it to, I think, Augustina is going to go next, I believe.
Yeah.
From our partners at Ingram, who also work with us, to talk a little bit about their role in distribution.
Thanks so much, Micah. Hi, everyone. I'm Agustina Casal. I'm the Director of Digital Sales and Marketing at Ingram Content Group. I'm sure many of you are aware of Ingram. We have a big library team under library services led by Carolyn Morris. We also work very closely with different digital vendors to help get our publishers' catalogs out into the marketplace through our CoreSource Plus platform. We have over 500 distributed publishers, so publishers that come to us and ask us to help grow their business. And that is the core job of Ingram. It's to get books out into the marketplace, and it's to help independent publishers be successful. We also work with a lot of self-published authors through our Ingram Spark program. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of content at Ingram that we are highly invested and motivated to get out into the marketplace and to get into as many readers' hands as we can. When it comes to libraries, we are as passionate as everybody else here in making sure that our publishers' catalogs are as attractive as possible, but bearing in mind that we are also trying to help our independent publishers run a business and be successful in and of themselves. So at the end of the day, it's where is that balance, and how can we help the libraries build sustainable catalogs where your holds ratio are reasonable, where you don't have 700 people waiting for the next available copy, but that you can have some level of simultaneous access, knowing that a publisher may not necessarily be making as much as they need to make in order to be able to publish the diverse voices that they want to bring into the world. So it's the ability to have this conversation is essential, because it helps us think of creative ways to work with the libraries and with our partners to make books available in different models. Today, most of our catalog is available in perpetual one copy, one user model. And it's great to hear that that is a well received across all of the librarians that spoke today. We're also going to start offering our catalog in more flexible lending models. And a lot of this is exactly what Micah just spoke about. Models that allow for bundles of 100 or simultaneous use, where 40 people can borrow the single copy at the same time, just so that collection holds can and ratios can be better managed, while at the same time supporting the discoverability of the voices that our publishers are bringing into the marketplace. We also work very closely with our publishers on good and robust metadata to help you find books that they are publishing. So to hear what areas you look for, what you're searching for, reviews or keywords, to understand how you as librarians are looking for content is so helpful. And so I really appreciate that you're helping us understand how you're using different interfaces to find books that will meet what your patrons are searching for. That's it. I think I'm passing it over to Mallory. Thanks so much, everyone.
Great. Thanks, Augustina. Yes. I'm Mallory Bontrager. I'm the Senior Director of Publisher Development for Independent Publishers Group. And I can keep mine short because Augustina, as a distributor, she said a lot of the same things I would have. So at IPG, we do that, partner with all of the different digital vendors, Overdrive, EBSCO, ProQuest, Hoopla, the lot of them. So we are, as IPG, we are an aggregator for indie publishers, and we try to be as agnostic and all-encompassing for our client publishers, meaning we want to partner in all types of models so that our publishers can then select what and how they want to participate, price it how they need to, all that fun thing, all those fun things for both ebook and e-audio. So the models that we offer, and again, these are through the library suppliers or distributors. We're in perpetual single use, 3x unlimited use. We're in the pay per use, cost per use model, subscription. We're doing bundles of lens with Micah and the DPLA team. We offer specials for book clubs and other opportunities that might come through, like Overdrive, for example, from the work that you all are doing as librarians. In the academic space, we offer the perpetual models plus short-term loan, demand-driven access, access to loan, and so on. So we try to be everywhere possible. Anything the library suppliers or distributors offer, so do we. That opens the door for our publishers to make their own books available to librarians everywhere possible, so that the librarians can really purchase how they need to for their budgetary needs. So I think I'll end there.
Thank you, Mallory. So I think it comes back to me now for the Q&A, and I just ask the panelists and hosts to just let me know when I should stop. We're gonna turn it over to Michael Reynolds from Europa Editions at the end. But I just wanted to take a moment to kind of quickly summarize a lot of the topics that I'm hearing that I think we are going to want to address further at the PLA event. Librarians are really balancing access to titles and the demand for access. As we've heard people say, those might be the big James Patterson or Stephen King ebooks. And one important thing for all the indie publishers here who might not know is that none of the big 5 publishers offer perpetual licenses. They are often metered access or time-bound or checkout, a certain number of checkouts. And so I think that is an important thing for everyone to, the indie publisher side to realize. If you don't know what types of licenses your books, you're offering through these platforms, whether it be Overdrive, that is used by 90% of public libraries in the United States, and they're owned by a private equity firm, KKR. I just wrote an article about it for Library Journal. I'll put that in the chat. Where could a library-friendly platform like Palace come in? I think some of these things are important for us to know. And building a collection that does not expire is really the mission of libraries. I've heard librarians say, after 1 or 2 years, that very expensive license for Stephen King, they have to buy it again. And that's just not sustainable in this world, as library budgets are, decreasing in some cases. So just to review, people have mentioned perpetual access. That's also called one copy, one user. So you might see the acronym OCO-OU. There's cost per circ or cost per use, which I know our distributor introduced during the pandemic. This idea that each individual request for a book would be cheaper, but it would help libraries address demand for a book. And I think I mentioned the metered access. There's a variety of licenses there. And then the simultaneous use, I think many people have mentioned that. And what that means is that it's not just limited to one copy, one user at a time. A large group of patrons or all patrons could access it anytime. There's no line. And so I've heard that Stephanie Anderson at BookOps has described that as, maybe publishers can think of that as co-op, like a special advertising that we do through some of our print book vendors, like, a front table at Barnes & Noble. Like maybe there'd be a way, a library system would want to promote that simultaneous license or that title more if there was a simultaneous license. So those are just some of the things on my mind that I'd love, to start working toward. So to ask our librarian panelists, one of the other things I've encountered is there's really not a lot of transparency in data from our perspective. Indie publishers cannot see into platforms like the Overdrive marketplace, for example. I don't know what other publishers are offering. I depend on my librarian friends to tell me what they see and what they're dealing with. So I think there's a real opportunity here to hear from our librarian panelists, what are some interesting or innovative offerings you've seen from digital aggregators? Micah mentioned the five at a time to help facilitate discovery for indie titles. I think that's really interesting. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to take part in that because of our distributor. Have you seen publishers offering ebook bundles? Can you give us an example of a simultaneous access? And I think one of the things I see for us working together is maybe indie publishers could advocate for some experiments, to say we want to offer, a book club simultaneous access for this particular title, but we sort of need ideas from you to ask for those things. So if any librarians want to take that question.
Well, for me, what's come up, it's a sort of a new license model that I've seen. on Palace, Overdrive, they're offering more concurrent use access models. And so generally what that leads me to do is I will buy, the first and foremost license I buy for any title is the longest license, be it perpetual, 2 years, 5 years, whatever I can get for the longest time period possible. And then I use the supplementary licenses to help drill down our holds list. So the concurrent use licenses, if they're in packs of 40, 50, 75, whatever they are, those are the most useful for us to promote both longevity and more immediacy of access that our patrons are demanding for hot titles.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I'll say something. So 2 things. There's simultaneous use plans that you can purchase, like Tantor or something, where you can get 25 licenses for a certain amount of money. For us, it is quite expensive. Usually they're not super hot titles, but they're cozy mysteries, true crime, things like that. And so I'm always hoping at the end of a year on those to get under $1 a circ. That's what I'm looking for. I feel very frustrated when we just take a chance on these 25 titles and, you know, on average they're doing okay, but 1 or 2 will have 0 or 1 or 2 circs. So they're like, it'd be nice to just have some guarantee of a minimum or a sort of like a bump up CD where you like 10, you know, a month into it, you could say, I'm going to switch these titles out for something else, something like that. We always go for 1 copy when user titles. 99% of the time we go for 1 copy when user titles at all times, even when we're hitting holds ratios, because we realize that we are still adding new users, new digital readers, brand new digital readers. So like an example, Dale Carnegie, we every couple of years we have to buy another license because it's a perpetually popular book and we have more readers, so more readers getting us to, for us it's a 6-to-1 ratio, not 4-to-1, unfortunately, that we try to maintain on everything. But I also wanted to say, because I haven't heard anyone say it, we're definitely now at a holds ratio that is also associated with the price of what it costs to buy a new license. You know, the lower the price, the lower the holds ratio will go for.
That's interesting. Anybody else?
Yeah, if I can just jump in, I wanted to say as far as promotion goes, I have, I think 14 or 16 content carousels that I can program that show on LibUNU, you know, open it up and people use these to browse. And I always have an always available ebooks and an always available e-audio book somewhere in that top 10, usually in the top 5. So that if that helps, I think that's relatively common across libraries. But if you want to check, like you can go on Google and say, show me Sonoma County Overdrive, and you'll be able to see what the content carousels there look like, and get an idea of how you might be promoted, how your titles might be promoted if you do a simultaneous use license.
I can just briefly say, you know, as I mentioned, we work with YBP and their Gobi platform as the main way to acquire ebooks. And during the pandemic, we pivoted to an e-preferred model where if a book is available as an ebook, we prefer to get it as an ebook and not a print book. And we had an ordering of the preferred licensing options that we would like to see. I don't know if we would keep that ordering as we initially set it up, because while we put DRM free and unlimited user access at the top, we actually are not sure if that's worth it for very specialized books, where this is, I think, a real difference with academic libraries, maybe where we don't anticipate a lot of users, but we just want the book available for a small potential number of users. And we have to balance that with having more access for books that may be more popular or assigned in classes where there's anticipated to be much more use. So it's kind of a real back and forth for us.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The DRM free, option for course adoptions for digital content. And I think I wanted to get to some of the questions in the chat from publishers, and maybe we can go back if we have time. Somebody's asking, how important are trade reviews, Kirkus PW Library Journal book list for purchasing, and also what are your go-to outlets for discovering new titles for your collection, newsletters, publications, etc. That's something we've heard on our side, indie publishers, that that's so important, and we've seen that when you go into like Baker and Taylor or different aggregators, that often those trade reviews or any reviews, major reviews, pop up front and center, and then that's important for public libraries. I'm curious, it's interesting to hear Carmi talk about these carousels, because I'm wondering how much, the aggregators' selections are influencing what you buy. For example, is if somebody paid, a Big Five publisher paid to show Black History Month titles, like is that how you're collecting? Or I know that there are carts that you can just purchase carts based on topics that aggregators are putting together. In some ways I've kind of shifted towards a balance between almost thinking, reviews, yes, are important, and certainly I have a library newsletter I send out, but like, those carts are maybe even more important. So I'd love for people to comment on that.
On my end, we try to match the print collection as much as possible, because we're trying to offer a title in every format available, so a patron can access it in whichever way is most comfortable for them. And so I actually base a lot of mine off the print buyer's cart. I ingest those into the digital platforms. Then I do go by reviews, and then I go by different subject headings that I'm looking for. I'm able to sometimes see patron demand on those titles as well. So just filtering those things really fills up the carts fast. I mostly use the vendor provided carts for my curations on the front page, and also filling gaps, because they do provide diversity lists, which are useful to us as well.
Anybody else? I want to get to Carolyn's question here. Carolyn Morris asks, how does ebook pricing factor into your library's print purchasing? We've heard a lot about ebook pricing. Does anyone want to take that?
And I think that goes library by library. Since I have a consortium of 45 libraries, essentially we determine every year what we're going to spend in the next year, what we expect to spend, and then we invoice the libraries and they adjust their digital spending accordingly. That kind of calculus, each library will probably do differently based on their goals. For example, Sandra talked about hoping to offer a digital title for every print title that they have in the collection, which is amazing. Like, I'm like, I should move to Sonoma County. With ours, we can't afford that kind of goal, and so we're kind of just trying to keep the lights on, basically.
I must say we don't actually reach that goal yet, but something
They're not always available. Art books, for example, are rarely available in a digital format. In our consortium library, we have a budget for the consortium, and then libraries can individually contribute more, and thank goodness that they do. We would never be able to, meet demand, but we have selectors for each audience, and then even, for specific like nonfiction and so forth. So I couldn't say what they really do, but I don't think we're at all using prepared carts to guide our decisions. Maybe sales, but not carts.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, I want to combine two questions in the Q&A. People should keep adding them until we're cut off here. Sarah Bell asks, what platforms are you using for purchasing and discoverability? So I'd love for people to mention that. And then if, Margaret asks, if an independent publisher goes around the aggregators and contacts your library directly, what happens? What is your ideal scenario for a publisher to reach out to you directly?
We mostly select on Overdrive and the Palace Project app. So those are the two ones that I really get my hands into the collection on. We do have a few other vendors we use, like COSLA and our Anki books, which are curated for us. I also use newsletters a lot. I use Book Riot. I use the Crime Writers of Color newsletters, those kind of things to find more indie press, indie authors. So newsletters, lists, curated lists from small publishers, super good. Send them to my email box, please.
That's a good question, and we haven't actually considered it. We have author donation forms that our committee reviews, but we've never been contacted by a publisher for a set of materials. So it's probably something that our eZone committee would definitely entertain.
I think in the academic library area, it's really challenging to work with individual publishers just because of the volume at which we work and the real difficulty of setting people up as vendors in our university. So we really have to rely on the distributors. So it can often be more productive to connect up with those distributors and ensure your material is getting represented in the platforms that we're using.
Parmi, do you want to say anything about this one?
Sure. So to be completely honest, right, with our consortium, and a big consortia are not uncommon. Like, I think Rhode Island is a large consortia with all of the public libraries in Rhode Island. There are big consortia in Arkansas, North Carolina, right? So probably the best way to get the attention of selectors in those cases is simply to put a package in Overdrive or Palace. So if you are willing to get eyeballs on your authors, then a compelling simultaneous use package would be something that libraries would share with each other. That, hey, I found this. It's really it has some great content. The title, the cover art looks great, and it's reasonable. And you will find, I think, that it'll start slow and then it'll pick up. That will probably be more effective. I do also know that our selectors, they like email newsletters, and they do, select based on the sort of lists of titles that they get once a month or whatever.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm curious, like, what happens if your distributor won't let you do simultaneous license, like in my case, or, there's some issues there that, I'm trying to work through. And maybe that will evolve over time. Michael Blackwell reminds me this won't change overnight, but I do think it's important to be sharing this information. Catherine, I think there's one more question in the Q&A, and then maybe we'll go over to Michael Reynolds, if that's okay, Micah. Catherine's asking, Catherine's from a poetry press, wondering which permissions work best for librarians. I mean, I would think that perhaps, Catherine, you would be distributed by somebody who would handle all of those issues, and that, but I'll let our panel respond. Catherine says, we also offer ebooks and audiobooks, and we're wondering how we can get the word out to libraries about the electronic versions of our books.
Yeah, again, being in every marketplace that you can, wherever librarians can see you. For me, poetry is kind of a slow use item. It does come in waves, especially through Poetry Month. It gets really big. I usually try to get those in perpetual access. I really love audio poetry, so you can really listen to how it's meant to be said. And then also offering simultaneous use. So when we do have those big poetry months, and maybe we want to feature titles or really push it out to our community, for 30 days, we can offer unlimited poetry for everyone. That would be awesome.
Can I just really quickly underscore something you said earlier, which is, I think for publishers on the call, it's really important to understand who what your distributor is offering if you're working through a distributor. I know IPG is offering a wide range of models. We're working with Ingram. They offer a wide range of models, and they're expanding those, and really making sure that your distributor has sort of your interests first in terms of giving you the flexibility to make things available to libraries. So I do think that's kind of a not well understood part of the supply chain that's really critical to making these win-wins happen.
Yeah, I can jump in, Micah. Thanks. Anytime publishers come to us and say, hey, I heard about this model that a library has offered, or a library reached out to me, or an author reached out, however you received word that, there's this new way of selling or ebooks, right, or digital products. We're going to take that and contact whatever digital vendors we're partnered with and see if we can get that live, whether it's for one publisher for 5 titles, or whether we ideally would roll it out to all of our publishers then, so that all can participate. But sometimes it just takes one of our client publishers with one book from one customer to then kind of blow up a model and introduce it to the rest of our clients. So always reach out to your distributors anytime you hear of anything new.
Thanks, Mallory. So I think we're ready to hand it over to Michael Reynolds. Michael Reynolds is joining us from Europa Editions, and at a IPC panel with Micah and Stephanie Anderson earlier this year, Michael had the idea of what we're doing at PLA. So I want to give him some credit that we're making that suggestion come true. Gathering, kind of like Michael said, there's like 6,000 booksellers in the US, and publishers spend a lot of money to go to a conference called Winter Institute, where we interface directly with booksellers. And there's something like 25,000 librarians in the US. And so wouldn't that be interesting if indie publishers had direct access to key library decision makers? So I'm going to pass it over to you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I have been accused of just looking for another excuse for a party, which may be at the origins of this, but no, I'll get to that. I have to confess that I sort of came here today thinking that I might need to sort of give everybody the hard sell on independent publishers and what we do, but Sandra and Pamela and Kami, you've all spoken about focusing on indie presses and small presses and the work that you're doing to bring more titles published by independent publishers into your libraries and into your system. So I can only assume that most everybody else on this call also understands that what independent publishers do is vital to the culture of reading in this country, that we're publishing more interesting books, we're publishing more diverse books, we're publishing all of the authors in translation almost. We're publishing more debut authors, we're publishing more neurodivergent authors, and this is just absolutely true that we contribute to bibliodiversity in this particular culture of reading in ways that are enormous. And so, however, I will also mention one other thing. It's starting to sound like a hard sell, but I think it's worth mentioning on this particular day. Nobel Prize was announced today, of course. Jan Fosse, the winner of the Nobel Prize this year, has been published by 3 different publishers in this market. Each of those publishers is an independent publisher. Last year's Nobel Prize winner, Annie Ernaux, published by Claire Seven Stories. The year before that, published by New Press. I think, as far as I know, every single Nobel Prize winner in literature over the past 10, 15 years, with the possible exception of Bob Dylan, has been published by an independent publisher. So we are publishing more diverse books. We're not only publishing niche books. Yeah, we're there also for a general readership and for patrons of your library with all sorts of tastes. So this, to me, is sort of the vital thing about what we represent as independent publishers. And it doesn't seem to me, as I said, that I need to convince you of that. But what we definitely do need, I believe, is better and more effective ways of communicating who we are and what we do and where the opportunities lie and where the affinities lie. And I don't want any of the distributors on this call to get nervous. That's not what we're not talking about cutting. We can't work with you without our distributors. We can't work with you without our platforms. And we're not talking about bypassing or any of that sort of stuff. What we need, however, are more opportunities and more occasions to talk to you directly, to reach out to you directly, without overloading your inbox. And I've seen, firsthand how that has transformed our relationship as independent publishers to retailers. How moments, occasions, forums like Winter Institute have transformed our relationships and made the communication that runs between independent publishers and retailers more effective. And so I think that the attempting to do something similar, where we have an opportunity to meet face to face. I think there's nobody that's quite as good as communicating why we do what we do as sort of the publishers themselves. The more opportunities that we have for that, I think the better the synergy between independent publishers, small publishers, and library systems is going to get. So I'm really happy to be here, happy to have this occasion. I'm really looking forward to this event, the summit that we're organizing at PLA, and I hope you all sign up and all come along and we can talk more.
Thank you so much, Michael. Micah, we're going to close. Let's see.
Yeah, Jeremy's going to bring us home.
Hey, everybody. It's great to see you all, and thank every single one of our panelists for a fantastic conversation this afternoon. And I want to just remind you of a couple of quick things. The gathering that is taking place, I'm going to go ahead and drop that link to the conversation happening at PLA if you are shuffling off to Columbus. So please get on that link. And I want to just again remind you all that this is part of an ongoing collaboration between the Digital Public Library of America, ReadersFirst, and the Chief Officers of State Library Agencies. And I'm also going to drop in the chat the link on the DPLA website where you can find the archives of the previous sessions from this series, and go and check those out. See what you think, and encourage everyone on the call today to drop an email to myself or Micah or Michael or Kat, anybody, and let us know what you'd like to hear about as we continue to have our ongoing conversations about collaborating for access. Thank you all for being with us this afternoon and for the work that you do each and every day.